Um, I think I was a little bit hesitant at first with the audition because I really felt like I don't want to play another damsel in distress. I feel like I've done a lot of that role of the little girl that has to be saved, And as much as like some of my other characters were strong-willed characters, they were always being saved. And I was like, I don't want to be that anymore. I want to be able to be either the bad guy or someone who actually I feel like has is courageous enough to hold the movie and hold up such important scenes. And when I really like fully read the script of the Boogeyman, I was like, Sawyer is this. She is not a damsel in distress. From the first few scenes, you see her as this scared little girl, but as you see her progress, she is a strong soul that is just trying to help her family, and nobody believes her. And it's just so terrifying to think that you're facing this kind of entity on your own because nobody believes you for it. And she is just an incredibly strong character, and I immediately was pulled to Sawyer. And she is just, I mean, a wonderful character that I really enjoyed playing.
I mean, anything Stephen King, he's the absolute horror king. I think my first session with Rob, I realized that he was very passionate about it, and he was going to make a naturalistic, grounded movie. And I felt similarly. Like, I've done Yellow Jackets and I've done a lot of genre-y stuff, and I don't want to be, your fears to be put into a box. But this, I could tell, was going to be different, and it was going to be special, and it was going to be, at the core of it, about a family and their complicated dynamics.
Well, I think I want to be like Sawyer because she is just an amazing little girl, and I think I try and relate to her as much as I can. I think there are some differences, just like simple differences, like I'm homeschooled and Sawyer goes to public school kind of thing. But like I think deep down we're really similar characters, and I think it's really cool that I get to play characters that I relate to so easily a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, Sadie felt kind of like how I felt in high school. I definitely felt very outcast and isolated, but that's just such a natural feeling for anyone in high school. She's in such a specific stage of her life right now with the grieving, so I can't relate to that. But I can relate to her just using music as an outlet, isolating herself and turning to music instead. Those are all things that I was doing in high school. But I admire her resilience and how strong she is, but I think we're pretty different.
I think I'm more of a horror game person. Like I like playing horror games, and like learning about the lore to it and stuff. But
So cool.
I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I did 3 as like my step into horror, which was The Witches, Roald Dahl's The Witches, the 2020 version.
I haven't seen that version.
Yeah,
How
it's
did you
terrifying.
to play a mouse?
But yeah, and then I also watched The Mummy and I watched The Sixth Sense. So those were kind of my step into watching horror movies. And yeah, so it was the Anne Hathaway one that I watched.
Nice.
That one's terrifying. She gets her
Really?
hands cut off by
You should
a
watch
giant
the original
spinning
too. That's what I
conditioner.
grew up with. For me, I love horror movies. I'm obsessed with zombie movies. I was obsessed with 28 Days Later when I was younger. Pan's Labyrinth. The Audition. I learned that the theme song on piano and just knew it was the most like messed up movie of all time. Japanese horror is on another level. Yeah, I've always loved horror. I love anything really genre-y.
Well, I think scared is the emotion I struggle most with on camera. Like, I can get to sad pretty easily. Happy just comes naturally. Angry I can get to pretty easily. But scared is, I think, what I struggle most with getting to. And
You did it really well in this movie.
I struggled with this one, but I ended up learning this trick that I actually picked up on Obi-Wan. I did this thing with this woman. We don't call her an acting coach because that's not what she is. She doesn't run lines with me or anything. We like to call her an acting therapist.
Oh, I love that.
She's basically, she taught me tricks on how to not get myself damaged by what the character's feeling.
Important. So important.
And so she taught me how to do this thing with colors to put on like the character and not feel what you're actually feeling, you know, what the character's feeling. And it was just really helpful, and it got me through a lot of it, and it was just really awesome.
I think for me, it's just about being connected with my breath and in tune with my body and very in tune with my breath. Jumping up and down before takes, as simple as that.
Yes.
It like gets the breathing right. Just as long as you're in tune with your breathing, I think that's kind of, for me, the core of a lot of my emotions and a lot of the terror. So that was something that I was kind of hyper fixated on. I feel like I always do playlists for any project that I work on. I feel like most of it was pretty depressing because she's in a pretty depressed
lot of emo
point.
music.
A lot of, I mean, we bonded over our, you like emo music too?
Yeah, it's true. I made a playlist as well. I also wrote a journal. I like to write.
That's genius.
I like to write journals in the voice of my character and bring in. And what was
so well
really awesome was I showed it to Rob, and what actually happened was in this journal that I wrote as like extra, I had these red headphones that I had gotten, and if you see in our hallway scene, the red headphones are sitting there on a desk, and he had actually shown it to set deck, and nobody knows it but me, because like me and him know like this little Easter egg that was actually in my journal. And then just recently I actually redid it as I added an extra paragraph, which was like an entry from a year later. And like I added some things in my current life, like Sawyer gets a cat and Sawyer gets a bearded dragon, and the cat sits on the side closer to the closet of her bed. You know, they moved into a new house and like all of that kind of thing. And it's kind of like a little epilogue that I wrote, and I sent it to Rob, and it's like in a different font and everything, like less loopy lettering, and she even calls back to it and is like, the loopy lettering was so stupid, no wonder I couldn't write as much. It was really cool.
The first thing that attracted me was Stephen King. To be a part of his legacy in any way was something that I've always wanted to do. I love his writing, and his characters are so rich. And then reading the script, which was beautifully written, and then talking to the director, Rob Savage, and getting an understanding of what he wanted to do with it, which was a more human story than you might see in other horror films. He felt that the jump scares wouldn't be scary if you didn't care about the characters. So the combination of all that made me want to be a part of the film. I get scared watching horror movies, but like watching horror movies in a crowd. There's nothing like the screams and the tension and the when you're sitting in a dark, crowded movie theater. So I'm really, really excited that this one's going to come out on June 2nd. Playing the role was a great, fun challenge. It was, he just lost his wife, and he doesn't know how to move forward. He's got 2 young daughters, and certainly can't live up to the woman he married, and all of that complexity was why I wanted to do the movie. The Boogeyman, which is a really scary monster in this movie, is also all the stuff that's lurking inside of these people. and grief being the main component. How do they deal with grief? How do they not deal with grief? And yeah, the heroes of this movie are my daughters. They have incredible roles, and that they fiercely attacked. It was great to watch them do this. Not only their kind of their intimate, quiet scenes, but the way in which they confront the boogeyman and battle him, I think is will be great for an audience to see.
The thing that attracted me the most to being a part of the film it's a tricky question because I didn't want to do the film. I wasn't attracted to the film at first. I was scared of the film. I thought the film was going to be too challenging for me. I thought that added pressure of the fact that it was a Stephen King adaptation and he's, one of my favorite creators wasn't exciting at first. It was actually intimidating to me. And the fact that the character was going to require something from me that I didn't feel like I was willing to really give. So I guess the answer to your question, with all that being said, would be Rob Savage, because I had said no, I think a couple of times, but I definitely was feeling like it didn't feel like I was ready for the challenge of this role, and I didn't feel up to it. And then Dan Cohen, one of the producers of the film, asked me to meet with Rob, and I did, and I really fell for the guy. I think he's pretty special. I love acting. I love the challenge of bringing a character to life that I've never gotten to do before. So I love all genres. I love superhero films, science fiction, and horror specifically. So I'm definitely a genre fan, you could say. But all roles to me provide an opportunity for me to do the thing that I love doing so much, which is acting. And when they are unlike anything I've done before, they provide these great challenges, which I think helpfully make me a better actor and help me to create work that's engaging and captivating. I think I exist in the darker corners of a lot of movies and television shows and theater that I've done because maybe I've existed in a lot of those darker corners in real life. I think I've had, in some ways, a life experience that has, taken me to, or I've taken myself to, some pretty forbidden forests. And I guess perhaps I'm able to channel some of that, bring that into the work that I do. I also, I think it's an important place to go and explore. And I think horror movies in particular have the opportunity and potential to disarm us with all of the magnificence of horror filmmaking, and unbeknownst to us often imbue us with ideas and concepts about things that really matter. So yeah, I love being amongst the monsters.
I think grief is grief plays such a big part in horror movies, I think, because it's something that we all sadly have to go through. There's a universality to it. It's one of it's a kind of taboo subject that nobody wants to talk about, you know, both in terms of our own mortality and losing people close to you. Horror, I think, is best when it's speaking to the things that we don't ever want to talk about in polite conversation, and grief is such a huge one that hangs over all of us that we never ever speak about. And it's also it's the specter of death, which is also, you know, the starting point for so many of our boogeymen. You know, realism is something that you kind of have to create your own version of in whatever horror movie you do. You basically teach an audience how to watch your movie. So you start out, and if you're pitching everything at kind of zany Evil Dead levels from the beginning, then the audience is going to invest in that same way. They're going to feel like the world is a bit more flippant and a bit more cartoonish. Whereas, you know, with something like The Boogeyman, the idea was at the end of the movie, you're going to have a family fighting a literal creature in a basement, which is pretty far-fetched and fantastical. But we're going to start with this very realistic portrayal of a family going through grief, and this very dark, very human therapy session, which kicks us off based on the short story. And I wanted to kind of almost lull the audience into a sense of realism that was very grounded at the beginning of the movie, and then slowly, through kind of drip feeding our scare scenes, introducing the monster bit by bit, just as a thing that lurks in the shadows and is off screen, slowly, you know, almost like turn up the heat on the audience so that by the time we get to fighting the monster in the basement, it doesn't feel so far-fetched. It still feels like we're in base reality, and this could happen to any of us. That it's we're all we've all potentially got a creature lurking in our dark closet space. When I joined this project, the draft that Beck and Woods had done focused on Will, the therapist father, who, you know, was investigating his kid's claims of this creature. It felt to me like the version of the movie that I wanted to tell was more geared towards the younger characters, and I was more interested in kind of evoking those childhood fears and what it felt like to be a kid afraid of the boogeyman. And so we focused on the kid characters, one of which was actually a male character, Sawyer, originally. And slowly, as we started to develop those characters, it felt like it would be more interesting if Sawyer was a girl, and that it was about this kind of sisterly bond developing throughout the movie. That we had Sophie's character almost as like a broker between the two worlds of childhood and adulthood. That she was the one who was listening to her kid sister and not quite believing her, but knowing that something was up, and trying to kind of parlay that to her dad, who was very much in the world of rationality and adulthood, and wasn't believing anything that the children were talking about. And it felt like as soon as we got that dynamic, that sisterly dynamic, working, the whole movie started to click into place. Sophie and Vivian are just completely phenomenal, and the thing that I love that they brought to this film is their personality is writ large in this movie. They're both such wonderful people as well as such wonderful performers, and you know they gave so much day after day to this movie, and it was so much fun being able to play around with them on set, being able to improvise, being able to workshop scenes. So they would bring their own ideas on the character, but also their own little quirks and their own sense of humor and their own sense of weight to some of the heavier scenes. And you know, this goes for all the cast, for David and Chris and everyone. I'm just so grateful that all of the actors brought so much and invested so much of themselves into this movie. I think you can feel it across the whole film. Their personality is so baked into the DNA of the thing. Absolutely. I think everyone has their own idea of what the boogeyman is and what the boogeyman represents to them. But really, the boogeyman is just the thing that exists in the darkness that's just beyond what we can see. And so I wanted to kind of weaponize the darkness in the movie in a way that meant that we didn't have to show the boogeyman very much. But every time there was a dark space in the frame, the audience was on edge. They felt like they might be able to see the twinkle of some eyes there, or that something might emerge from the shadows. And it was really the idea that I didn't want to kind of invalidate anyone's own personal fears. I wanted them to leave the movie feeling like they'd been terrified all over again, and that they felt like being a kid staring into the darkness of their closet again, but that this movie left them feeling like their boogeyman could still exist in that darkness.